back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have back on the show our friend Frank Figliuzzi, a national security contributor and regular columnist for NBC News and MSNBC Daily. He served as assistant director for counterintelligence at the FBI. He served 25 years as special agent. And his new book, Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killers, is out now. You got to get it. We'll talk about it near the end. Thanks, Frank. Nice to see you, my friend. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, and I was happy that we could actually meet in person again at Glenn Kirshner's shindig in D.C. recently.
At Glenfest on Saturday, there he had his Justice Matters people there, and it was good to see Glenn. And also, you know, Daniel Hodges, the officer, was there who was brutally beaten on January 6th, and so was Michael Fanone was there. And that brings us to the first topic I want to talk about and get your reaction as someone who's been involved in from watching from January 6th to covering it and writing about it. On next Thursday, Donald Trump at his country club in New Jersey is hosting the J6 Awards Gala. It's an awards gala, folks. And they're going to honor and celebrate the 20 defendants who sang the song Justice for All, which Trump lent his voice to, and any other defendants who've shown incredible courage and sacrifice. And Donald Trump has he's not been shy about the support of the terrorists. They supported him and his effort to stay in power. He promised pardons. He's called them hostages, patriots. And recently he made it clear his promise of a pardon includes those who beat up police officers and have been convicted of that. So this is perfect. What is your reaction to what I view as an abomination?
Look, anger. I seldom say this, Dean. I try to be as eloquent as possible, but my first response is anger when I heard this. Let's understand something. He's celebrating felons. He's celebrating people who beat law enforcement officers, but even more disturbingly, people who actually have been convicted. We have convictions. Is he celebrating the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers leaders who have been convicted of seditious conspiracy? Which ones is he celebrating? I can't tell the terrorists from the patriots here. So understand something. He has to celebrate this because it's part of the legend that January 6th was something patriotic in line with a stolen or rigged election. If he walks away from those terrorists, he walks away from the myth that the election was stolen. And I want to also point something else out. I've had people on social media, and maybe I spend too much time on social media caring about what terrorists think. But I've had people say, hey, Frank, I know you're against this celebration of terror, but what about Kamala Harris? Didn't she contribute funds to help bail people out after George Floyd protests? So I saw that and I did some research. And the truth of the matter is that she became associated with a fund that was offering legal services and or bond or bail to some very small, like handful of people who were arrested for protesting. So look, if you want to put on a moral equivalency, terrorists who tried to stop the peaceful transition of power in the United States of America with a protest that occurred because a Black man was murdered on camera by a police officer, knock yourself out. But I'm missing that moral equivalency.
There's not. And it's very clear on the website for this event, because I wrote about it for MSNBC Daily, that they're honoring specifically the 20 defendants who contribute to the song Justice for All. And the Washington Post identified some of those people in past articles. And they include Ryan Nichols, who, according to DOJ documents, he pled guilty to 2 felonies, including assaulting law enforcement. He sprayed law enforcement with pepper spray in their face, caused injuries. Another one, his last name's Cater, Khater, is the one that sprayed Brian Sicknick, who died the next day. And this person who pled guilty to these charges of assaulting an officer. And the wife, the woman who organizing this event, her husband's a former sheriff's officer who was convicted of numerous felonies for assaulting police officers, including holding an officer down who they had taken his shield and everything down. And he held him down so the other people can beat the man who had very serious injuries. And this is the person that Trump is allowing to use his country club. You can't walk off the street and do it at a private country club. On the website, you have to get sponsored. And speaking at the event, according to the website, Rudy Giuliani and Peter Navarro, Donald Trump's close associates. Trump was invited. He didn't denounce the event. He just said he can't attend. This man should be denouncing this event, yet he's hosting an event. To me, It's not exactly, but it's akin to, people having a fundraiser for those who did 9/11 or Oklahoma City. January 6th was an act of domestic terrorism. That's what the DOJ has said. It's not me saying that. They say that under federal law. And this guy's honoring the actual terrorists who committed. It wasn't the people who walked in quietly, like the protesters. If they got ramped up and they were charged with a misdemeanor and Trump is trying to help them, well, maybe you can make the equivalent to what Vice President Harris did, in that people were peaceful protesting and got swept up in a big arrest. These are people convicted or pled guilty to assaulting officers. And Trump's honoring him at his country club. And I don't know, Frank, for the life of me, why it's not a bigger news story, because I think this is far surpasses the Arlington National Cemetery story.
Oh, I agree with that. As appalling as the Arlington Cemetery story is, you're launching into a whole other topic, which we could probably spend an hour on, which is why the media seems to be treating Trump as a legitimate candidate, and not the threat that he is. I can go off for an hour on that, but look, the people you rattled off and what they did, and the special VIP guests who might be coming to the celebration, are also criminals, convicted. Some of them served time already. So take it for what it's worth. But you're right. If somebody threw a party for Boko Haram or Hamas and said, we're going to celebrate the violence of this organization, you bet that would be the end of the world for the media. But here we are.
And Frank, from a national security point of view, Donald Trump celebrating these attackers over and over, defending them, having his rallies, many of them begin with "Please stand for the January 6th defendants who have been unfairly treated." That's almost exactly the announcer, how it goes. And calling them patriots and pledging to pardon them, including the ones who committed violent acts. What does that say to you, from your point of view? What do you take from that beyond the legend part? Is it incentivizing potential future violence on his behalf, saying, if you do something to help me between now and Election Day and I win, I got your back?
Yeah, I do think so. I think I have to tell you this, and it pains me to say this, but this is in a way. This is beyond the brain capacity of Donald Trump. These are puppeteers who are calling shots, saying, number one, let's normalize and downplay the violence of January 6th. Number two, let's send the clear, convincing message that if this happens again, we'll have your back and take care of you, and celebrate you with honor. And that, January 6th wasn't so bad, so maybe that needs to happen again. Because I got to tell you, Dean, the way that Trump is acting and talking these days, I don't need you to vote. You'll never have to vote again. We've got this covered. We've got the judges and the lawyers. Tells me he's not really interested in winning. He's far more interested in claiming that his election was stolen. And that is a recipe for violence all over again.
Are those, as you being an expert, are those red flags when Donald Trump's already begun the same language he used after the November 2020 election, which ultimately, and you can tell me if it's correct, but in my view, radicalized people to commit the act of January 6th. Does it concern you he's using similar language about it's going to be rigged and the only way we can lose is if they steal the election, that kind of language?
I'm convinced. I mean, this doesn't take rocket science. He is using the language, preparing the battlefield and saying, if they win, they cheated. And here we are. And we already have his minions in places like Texas and Georgia already manipulating the field, eliminating voters, in Texas, raiding Latino activists. If there's fraud, get it over with. Let's call it out. But the timing is quite interesting that on the eve of the election, Texas decides to conduct all-out search warrants on Latino voter activists.
Yeah, that was pretty on the nose there. I'm talking with Frank Figliuzzi, our friend. So, Frank, this is more speculative, but are there more things that if Trump were to say, it would really be a red flag for you that we're in a different place? And what I mean is, look, in 2020, he didn't want to lose. He probably thought he was going to win. He loses, he's stunned, and then it's sort of ad hoc. Okay, I'm going to do this, this, and that. Now, you both of us know, and our friend Glenn Kirshner, if Trump loses, then he's going to face trial in federal court. And potentially Georgia as well, where if he's convicted there, where there's already his convictions, he likely goes to jail or at least confinement at home. Like, it's not just losing about ego, it's about a loss of liberty he is facing. What would be like a real red flag that we should really be deeply concerned that he's leading us to a path to more January 6th, maybe a series of January 6th?
So he's more cornered than ever. You're right on the money with regard to the fact that he has no way out here, avoid prosecution and sentencing absent winning the presidency. That makes him more dangerous, more cornered than ever before. Adam Kinzinger, former Republican congressman, has pointed this out just in the last 48 hours. It's not unique thinking. And he's listened carefully to some things he's said this week with Jack Smith coming out with a new streamlined indictment in the election case. Trump actually said Kamala Harris is behind this. Like Kamala Harris can reach into the special counsel's office and rewrite an indictment. What the hell? So he's linking her now to his fate. And the more he does that, the more likely we are to see people treating her and Walz as the enemy, as ripe for and as meriting violence. My big concern, Dean, is not the iconic attack necessarily on the Capitol, because they'll be prepared for that in Washington. I'm concerned about what's viewed as the softer targets in the states and counties and voting precincts that really matter. And when they're counting the vote and when it's going to be close, and boy, is it going to be close. I'm really concerned about whether the states and counties are prepared for what's coming.
That's exactly my gravest concern, is that it's not another January 6th attack per se on January 6th. I remember vividly in 2020 where he was winning because they had not counted the mail-in ballots yet, right? Where this time he says, stop them from counting. I need you to stop them. They're cheating right now. And they run in and destroy ballots. Now, I hope there's data to back it up, but I don't know. Maybe there's not. That's my real concern.
Yeah. So interesting point you've made. What would really get Trump even more troubling, a real-time call to arms, meaning as the vote is being counted, he's announcing a falsehood that cheating is going on right now and it must be disrupted.
Right.
And, it remains to be seen, because there's arguments in the intelligence community about whether he continues to have a hold over a lot of people that would act out violently. I say it's obvious because we keep arresting people, but whether an organized effort would gel, knowing the chilling effect of the arrests for January 6th, knowing you're likely going to prison, could he actually organize something? Or are we talking about small cells, 2, 3 knuckleheads who actually could really do some damage? Because the lone actors are the hardest for law enforcement
Oklahoma
to
City
and prevent.
Oklahoma City. Look at how deadly that was.
That's all you need. Yeah.
So there might be a point where they have to call the National Guard out to protect voting locations, simply preventative, in a way that you have people around there to send a message. There'll be no attacks on our voting locations. And so you mentioned the new Jack Smith indictment. By the way, how much of it, just so people understand, because at first the headline was Trump indicted again. I'm like, what is this? And then I read the story, and the clickbait headline was really not, it was the exact same charges. But could you just tell people a little bit about why they had to do this and what it means?
Yeah, look, this was a direct response to the Supreme Court of the United States finding that a president has absolute immunity for his official conduct. And then the Supreme Court even went on further to say, yeah, official conduct might be, like you can't look at evidence like him talking to his DOJ advisors. That could be official. So it's a sad state of affairs, Dean, that, yes, we should be pleased that Jack Smith is bright enough to adapt and pivot and winnow down his evidence. The helpful way to look at this, as you said, is not that charges have changed, but rather the evidence they're going to use to support the charges has been winnowed down to eliminate any sense that Jack Smith is using official conduct against Trump. Okay, bad news. Are you kidding me now that forevermore, with this precedent set by the Supreme Court, we can't use official conduct or quasi-official? What about criminal discussions between a president and DOJ? What about that? What about Rudy Giuliani becomes the next attorney general and and Don and him have a criminal conversation once a week? We can't use that for evidence. So we're depriving a jury. And thankfully, by the way, another grand jury, again, a brilliant move by Jack Smith, he actually set a new grand jury. So no one can claim, oh, those charges were tainted by the grand jury that heard the official conduct evidence. Nope, he did it all over again. God bless him. But understand, it's only because we're now finding a Supreme Court saying, yeah, the president can pretty much do whatever he wants. So you better find offline conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable that the point blank, the Supreme Court said there is absolute immunity, absolute, folks. That means you can't overcome it. It's not a presumption. It's 100% absolute, ironclad for things, powers enumerated in the Constitution, meaning Donald Trump could literally say, I'm selling ambassadorships. Who wants to live in Italy for 4 years? Give me $1 million. Give me 50 million. Give me 100 million. And you can't prosecute him. And you can't even you can't overcome it. And the other thing is they talked about the president has the power absolutely to talk to his DOJ about who to prosecute and who not to. I can't believe we were always told that the president cannot direct it. It's supposed to be at least quasi-separate, that kind of stuff. Now, a president can go like, indict that person, don't indict that person, indict that person, and it's all protected.
Yeah, we're looking at a complete revamp of the government if Trump gets in power in terms of anything, any semblance of rule of law and constitutional authorities, independence of the FBI and DOJ. They make no bones about it. They don't want it to be. They've said, Project 2025 talks about 2 deputy attorney generals running the FBI and reporting directly to a president, getting rid of civil service protections, loyalty oaths. Yeah. So, let's say a president wants to, boy, this happened, didn't it? Wants to consider using the military to seize voting machines. He has a quote unquote official conversation with his Secretary of Defense. It's criminal in nature, in my opinion, because they're talking about illegal acts. And yeah, the Supreme Court will say, that's fine. We can't touch that. FBI, you can't even investigate that conversation because it was official.
It's beyond words. And I'm telling you, with Frank Figliuzzi. Frank, you touched on it for a second. I just want to get your reaction to the reporting on the Arlington National Cemetery issue. But one part of it is the one that concerned me. Look, the incident itself speaks for itself. Trump himself did not rough up anyone. There's no reporting on that. His henchmen, or his aides, but we'll call them henchmen, they apparently roughed up or were physically involved in pushing or stopping a woman who works there, saying we have to enforce federal law. You can't take pictures or video here for political purposes of a certain area. But what was remarkable to me in a bad way is that she filed an incident report, but she would not press charges because she feared, quote, Mr. Trump's supporters pursuing retaliation, according to the New York Times. And we're in a different place here where, law-abiding American citizens who are working for the government are fearful of, if they file charges, not even against Trump, against his aides, that they might suffer a backlash, even if not physical violence, doxing, having things sent to their home, having threats to their families. This should not be where we are as a country, but we are courtesy of Donald Trump.
When this kind of fear and intimidation results in changed conduct by government officials, Trump has won. This is the goal, is to change behavior and decision-making through fear and intimidation. And, we saw it in the revelations from the Washington Post when they reported on the robust and heated discussion between FBI officials and DOJ officials about whether or not to search Mar-a-Lago. And what we learned from that reporting is that the FBI senior official in that room was saying, this isn't happening on my watch. I'm not going to be the one signing off on a search of Mar-a-Lago. Really? So you lost your balls because you're afraid of Donald Trump. Similarly, when you're intimidating an Arlington National Cemetery employee, an Army employee, you win if she changes her behavior. So this is about much more than a stupid commercial filmed at a sacred place in America. It's about him winning through intimidation. That's what we're dealing with here. And if people can't see that, because again, the response from the far right is what? Well, yeah, where was Kamala Harris at the cemetery because, you know, she's part of the administration that pulled out of Afghanistan. So a couple of responses. One, it was Donald Trump's idea to pull out of Afghanistan. Number two, he has just recently said that he thinks Biden made a mistake because Biden didn't take the equipment, the American equipment, out first. So, but do I hear the media tearing that apart? Excuse me, Donald Trump. If you had done this, you would have taken all the munitions, all of the tanks, and all of the guns out first so we could save the expensive equipment. And you would have left the troops there undefended. Please explain. But nobody's asking him to explain that.
Well, that's corporate media. They go, oh, okay. And they'll just report what he says. By the way, on a serious point, that's neither Trump did it, nor can anyone say a Democrat did it. You wrote about it for MSNBC about the hack of the Trump campaign and the attempted hack of Democrats. What can you share about that, and what foreign actors are involved, and what more can we expect?
This is a really important topic for me, and I'll tell you why, because it's kind of a tangential topic. So look, when it first came out that Trump's campaign had been hacked and it looked like the Iranians, and the evidence started developing, that was really good evidence. The left on social media, the left has now become so conditioned to not believe a goddamn word that comes out of the Trump campaign. And by the way, totally understand that right. They said, oh, it's fake. It was Roger Stone's idea. By the way, thank God, you got to give credit to the Iranians who finally identified Roger Stone as the weakest link here to click on an attachment. That's right. How they got into the campaign. But here's what so look, now let's fast forward. The entire US intelligence community has now come out and said, this is Iran. And by the way, they're not just trying to mess with Trump's campaign. They've already tried multiple times to mess with the Harris campaign. So we should all, as Americans, be livid that a foreign adversary is trying to mess with our election. But instead, here's what I continue to see. And again, on the topic of Trump has won, think about this. I still see many people saying on social media, I don't believe it. It's a ruse. Look, if we've gotten to the place where we cannot believe the entire US intelligence community telling us something about a threat, we've got a big problem. And we got here because of Trump. And you can recall the infamous Helsinki press conference where he and Putin were standing at the lecterns regarding the email hack at DNC and Hillary. He says, I don't know why Putin would do this. His entire US intelligence community was telling him Putin did it, and he was dismissing it. So we've got to be careful, Dean, that if the entire US intelligence community, which I was a part of, says, hey, there's adversaries trying to mess with our election, be really careful, and we dismiss it, we're letting Trump win.
Look, I mean, part of it is that Donald Trump has chipped away at people's confidence in institutions, first on the right, and then, in a way, an opposite reaction on the right, on the left, for different reasons. It's not the same thing. Last thing here, in the last minute, I wanted to touch again on your book, Long Haul: Hunting the Highway Serial Killer. We talked, and some people want to make it a TV show or a movie or a lot of stuff's going on. But again, share a little bit about the book, because people should pick it up. Very interesting.
Well, you're very kind. Real quick, look, the book is doing well. In the first 3 weeks that it was out, it had to be printed 3 times.
Wow.
By HarperCollins.
Congratulations.
It's been well received, but mostly because there's a really important message here, which is 850 women have been killed in just the last few decades along our highways by long-haul truckers. It's a full-blown FBI initiative. That's what the book is about. It's a true crime account. And if you're interested in how young people, particularly women, can fall into the trap of trafficking, how it applies to everybody, if you think it's not happening in your town, you need to read the book. If you've ever wondered what long-haul trucking is like, I spent over 2,000 miles inside a big rig figuring out the subculture of long-haul trucking and sex trafficked victims and crime analysts. So it's something to pick up. And yes, there's been a lot of interest in maybe doing something even bigger with the book, but I won't count chickens until they're hatched.
I understand. And we have a lot of long-haul truckers who are completely law-abiding, who listen to the show, just so people know. Frank is not in any way saying everyone else, because truckers like SiriusXM because they can listen anywhere in the country. So we have a lot of great truckers who, during the time of COVID, were really such patriots. They were out there even the ones I disagree with politically, were out there risking their lives and their health to get us deliveries. But
listen,
there are bad people everywhere. I mean,
I partly dedicated the book to American truckers, and they are an essential part of our economy, and 99.9% of them aren't serial killers.
Right. But that 0.1% of you out there, this is the book about them. Yeah. Frank, my friend, thanks so much. Read Frank's stuff at msnbc.com, and on the X Twitter, you're just Frank Figliuzzi, or is there anything else? That's it, right?
Frank Figliuzzi 1. Yep.
Okay.
And I'm also on Threads and Instagram.
Thanks, Frank.